the absence of color is weird. The complete removal of that entire world is harmful. When I think color, I think, it could be just incredibly rich terracottas. Whatever people like. It's just not the weird, puritanical, total removal of this entire spectrum of beauty. Color has been, kind of always has been, a really beautiful part of space making and city making. It's not just maximalism or an over-the-top moment that might be fashionable for a brief period or something that is playful and good for kids only, but it's actually a very fundamental aspect of how we create special places. One of the very first things we did when we sought shelter was to start to decorate the world around us, to decorate our shelters, to kind of create our own versions of nature around us, our own kind of cosmos. And color is absolutely key and fundamental to that. And this is not, it's not like an attack in any way. What I always try and advocate for is that the use of color is not a kind of aberration. It's only very, very recently that we're living in an anomalous period where it is unusual to use a lot of color, because actually for the rest of human history it has been the norm. So it's not something odd or kind of niche, and it's not a fashion or a fad that comes and goes, but it's a kind of very substantial and beautiful and important way of working that should just be considered a kind of permanent aspect of our public realm, our creativity, our interiors. At the moment, it's sort of become like either a luxury because it's seen as something that kind of reduces assets into something which are less valuable because people won't like it because it's subjective, that somehow grey is the only thing that's neutral, or it's seen as bad taste. I do try and push for the kind of, I guess, a little bit less puritanism, right? The idea that something that nourishes your senses is suspect. It's a little bit like if you go to a movie and it's a movie that makes you cry a lot, that there's quite a few people who are film aficionados who say, oh God, no, it's so sentimental, film somehow has to be, it has to just bore the hell out of you or like for it, be impenetrable and quite difficult to understand, definitely not emotionally engaging in order for it to be serious. And there's and it's a kind of abnegation of feeling. It's an abnegation of the senses. It's a prioritization of the intellect. And that somehow if you use something that works and operates through your senses, through your emotions and through your feelings, it's less than. It's suspect, especially suspect if it works too well. So if a film makes you cry too much, oh my God, no, it's like undermining your intellect. It's dangerous. And color operates in a very similar way. In design and in architecture, it's seen as suspect because it does what a sentimental film will do, or a film that is not even sentimental, but a film that really manages to operate on your emotions. It operates directly on your senses and your emotions and your reactions without the intellect. You don't need to think to appreciate it, which is fine. Like I really love, to go back to Rome, there's the great split between people who like Bernini and people who like Borromini. There's the two examples of San Carlo alle Quattro Fontane and Sant'Andrea alla Quirinale. They're next to each other in Rome and they're very similar size. They were built around the same time and they embody two completely different approaches. And Bernini's is a warm bath of sculpture and polychromatic stone and yellow light coming from places that you can't see, illuminating white angels that are sort of extremely ecstatic and sensual, and the kind of curving shape is really immersive. It's something that envelops you. Your eye doesn't start to analyze it, right? You just kind of get lost in the feeling of it. It's sort of like a very sensuous opera. You go to the Borromini, which I love as well. It's like walking into a mathematical equation. It's like numbers. it's incredibly complicated and exquisitely beautiful, but you watch the lines, your brain is seeing rhythms and symmetries, and it's wanting to understand how it's structured and how it's designed and how it's broken down and how it all works. They operate in completely different ways. I mean, they're both utterly brilliant. They're both Roman Baroque, but they're sort of operate in completely different ways. And I'm absolutely on the Bernini end. I still absolutely love all the people who work on the Borromini end, but I have found that there is a lot of dismissing where maybe that approach is considered more superficial, and colour is sort of the most obvious aspect of an approach which operates through the feelings and the emotions, and therefore it's the most easily dismissed, which is what does happen at the moment. I mean, not totally, and it's not terrible, and I don't want to catastrophize, but that's kind of the dynamic. Like a lot of the battleground of aesthetics does happen in terms of design and architecture, does happen on the economies of domestic design. A part of it probably is that the commodification of our homes as assets, which are now by far and away the most important thing that we own. And they've changed from being just homes into being something which we trade and which we need to be able to sell. We don't necessarily stay in them in our whole lives. They're assets. And I think that shift and the kind of the fact that we move around more and we will trade up and we will be going up that ladder once we're on it and we want to sort of flip properties. I think that has maybe had something to do with it. I think the reason maybe I think that is because there was a period in the UK where we had a lot of, I think in the 2000s, where we had a lot of TV shows about flipping properties, you know, buying a property, doing it up and then flipping it for a profit. It's when the market was sort of kind of going up exponentially. And I do remember that was when I first started to see the advice, do it neutral. So it wasn't grey at the time, but it was white mostly and grey and maybe some beige, but it was like, do it neutral, because that will mean that nobody will be against it. It could appeal to anyone. I mean, it will appeal to no one, but it won't not appeal. Like, it won't be aggressively unpleasant for anyone. People will see it and they think, okay, fine. It was interesting because it came after, when I was growing up in the 90s, there was something called Changing Rooms, which was, I loved it, with Lawrence Llewellyn-Bowen. It was a show which was the opposite of that. It was like people doing up their homes to be their dreams. So like, you know, somebody wanted their bathroom to be a Roman bath, you know, and then with plywood they would make like, you know, fake Roman arches and things and ridiculous colors and stuff. And it changed from that to being these programs about flipping your house. At least here in the UK, and at least in terms of what I've noticed, that was when this baseline of you must be neutral started to spread and is now like a given. I wouldn't say that it's the importance of color. I think the way that I think about it is rather, because I don't want everyone to be like this, right? I'm not advocating for everyone to be like crazy colorful. That's not the case. I'm obviously an extreme example, and the reason I talk about this so much and have always talked about this so much is very often just to make the space for me to be able to do what I want to do. But I would say, I think the way that I think about it is the absence of color is weird. So the absence of color is an anomaly, and it is, yes, it's an anomaly and it's odd. The use of color is infinite. I mean, white and black are a color as well, kind of. But with the entire spectrum of finishes and materials and paints and colors that you can use, there's an infinite set of options. There's an infinite spectrum. Everyone can find tones that they enjoy and that they like. It makes me a bit sad because the complete removal of that entire world is harmful. You know, there's a reason we go on holiday to landscapes that are beautiful. It's because as biological creatures, we respond to the richness of environments around us. I advocate for people to be able to bring more color into their lives, and it doesn't help that I look this way and that this looks this way, because it puts them off. But when I think color, I think, you know, it could be just incredibly rich terracottas. whatever people like. It's just not the weird, puritanical, total removal of this entire spectrum of beauty from your lives. Everyone can find colors that work with them and that resonate, and they'll find that they really do resonate with them. It's a little bit like, Marcel Proust with the whole Madeleine, right? That the Madeleine, is it the taste of the Madeleine or is it the smell of? I think it's the taste of the Madeleine. Brings back very powerfully memories, right? Color, because it works on our senses, like music, like food. It's very similar. It brings back memories. It makes you feel a particular way. So there's certain colors that make me feel really like eating a roast chicken. So roast chicken for me is the comfort food. It's like being at home. There will be colors that make me feel that way because I have personal associations with them. And everyone has those types of things. And you can construct palettes, for instance, or materials combined with colors that really make you feel as wonderful as eating your comfort dish. It just pains me to see people living in environments that have absolutely zero relationship with them personally whatsoever. And I also I'm not a massive fan of color consultants who say, you must use this color because it goes with that color, and this color means that, and that color will make your heart go faster. I'm really, really not someone who believes there are any rules, really, frankly, that work with color. I just feel that it's a matter of everyone allowing themselves to enjoy them in their own way. And they do with fashion. So you go out in London, and actually it's a very colorful city. People are actually very in touch with the kind of colors that they enjoy and appreciate, and in combination with different materials and textures that they like. And it's the same thing. It's sort of allowing yourself to explore a side of yourself, which is there and is currently cauterized. It's like a limb that's been lost. I find white to be like a mystical, magical color. But then I'm like, why is there so much of it? Because the thing is, it's so special and it's so powerful. Like, you definitely shouldn't just smear it everywhere. So yeah, I'm not against any color. It's just, I think it's this sort of idea of negating it fully. Not everyone has to be like this, but it does seem like there's a general default now that everyone sort of doesn't have that space to explore that side of themselves. And obviously, for my particular interest, I don't do interior. I have done, but I don't currently do interior design. My great passion is the city. And these sort of cultural periods are evident kind of across spatial production. So like from domestic interiors to the creation of public spaces as well, you see similar tendencies. And I think, for the past 15 years, we have seen a lot of public spaces that have been dominated by granite pavers. I'm thinking of London, obviously. I'm very London oriented because I live here, but a lot nicer than they used to be, but with sort of granite pavers and very hard surfaces with, normally concrete seaters, maybe with a bit of wood, and very little planting. And I think already now there's starting to be a real shift. People are starting to realize that there is a need for nature, for planting to come back into those public spaces. And of course, it helps that there's a need for a sustainable drainage. We have issues obviously with flooding with surface water. So it helps that we need to have more planting anyway. But it's given an opportunity for people to realize that actually it totally transforms the way you see the space. And similarly, I think people are starting to be aware. And I keep mentioning nature and food and music because I think color operates in a similar way. It has similar benefits and qualities to those things. It nourishes our senses, just one of our senses, and it works with these other things. And so I think people are realizing that with bringing more planting into public spaces, similarly in interiors, people have started to bring plants in a lot, this kind of wellness idea. There is a recognition that actually the introduction of art, which I guess is a way that people can excuse the introduction of color, is something that is very beneficial. And so I'm starting to see more interest in people bringing kind of color, often crafted color, into the public realm, together with more nature. And similarly, I think interiors, there's more discussion about it from an art perspective. But I think a big part of that motivation is because it's that richness, that sensual richness that they're looking for. And art is a way to excuse it. It's allowed. It has substance. it's not decorative. Oh, I think of my work as decorative, but I think it's fine for it to be seen as art because somehow that is kind of more acceptable. Something in Japan. Yeah. So this is a book. Yeah, this is a book that I'm doing. I've written with Kate Mazard. It's a kind of gentle manifesto looking at the kind of incredible ways that color has always been a fundamental, absolutely fundamental part of the creation of important spaces, whether that be for individuals or communal. And the book is very much focusing on kind of large buildings in cities. It's a celebration of how, rather than how a lot of the times color has recently come to be seen as aberrant, and actually the absence of color as being something that is good and substantial and should be seen as the kind of universal norm, that actually throughout most of history, until very, very recently, the opposite was the case, that actually the kind of utilization and deployment of color through beautiful materials, many different kinds of materials, from brick to gold mosaic to earth to glass, was the way that we created every type of effect that we wanted to create in our buildings, in our religious spaces, in our shopping centers, in our houses. It can be used in any kind of building type. It can be used for any type of congregation or people or geographic location or culture. It can be used anywhere. So it's a celebration of that, effectively, the book. It's a kind of love letter / very gentle nudging manifesto to people who commission buildings, to people who talk about buildings, to people who appreciate buildings, and also just to people who walk around cities and maybe at the moment don't necessarily appreciate them or notice them. It's a love letter to all of these people, to nudge them, to nudge everyone to just open up to it, to commission it more, to appreciate it more. So that's a project that I've done in South London, in Croydon, and it's a kind of large colonnade of columns and walls. It's about 8 meters high, so it's kind of quite monumental. And the whole thing is clad in handmade porcelain tiles that have a very rich glaze. And the glaze changes from a kind of deep, rich underwater blue to kind of azzurro, kind of like nice sky blue in the middle. And then it rises to a white. And actually the rest of the building's facade, which is designed by HTA architects, is white ceramic. So it's a kind of transition from a ground level where we inhabit as passers-by, because this is in the public realm, to the kind of aerial skyline level, which is occupied by the rest of the facade. It has a kind of monumentality to it, but it's deeply saturated in color. For me, I guess, talks about this idea of being embedded in a lineage within history, which goes very far back. Because when I was working on that, I was thinking about Egyptian temples, and Durham Cathedral is a reference for that, which is not polychromatic, but at the moment, but was at the time, all the way through to sort of Safavid architecture, Portuguese facades, British arts and crafts. And it's all kind of in there, folded in, and it comes out through the shape, but also the color and the material together, kind of fused together to create a space which is experienced very bodily. Each of them are kind of like very sculptural objects. They have a kind of wonderfully rich glaze. For me, color, it's a material thing. It's not just a sort of abstract color on a spectrum. It's a combination between the wavelengths of colors that we see, but also how they interact with the material and what material they're embedded in and the way that material deals with light, how it feels. And this is a very rich, deep glaze which refracts light a lot because it has a depth, so it looks like water as you're walking through it. It's kind of aqueous. And it's also very crackled, so there's a lot of cracks that run through it, and like the cracks catch the light. So it has this really sort of shimmering, coruscating effect as you're walking around it, and it does make you want to touch it as you go past. And I do love that quality for my work personally. This is, again, nothing I say is, I try not to generalize, but for me, I really like doing work that it really is something that operates on more than one sense. So it sort of is extremely sensuous and visual, but it sort of makes you want to eat it or touch it. It's something that I really enjoy. When I look at colors, I do almost taste it. I mean, it's not like a really explicit synesthesia where I can say like that tastes like chocolate or whatever like that. But I absolutely feel it in my taste buds, in my stomach. My taste buds. It's like it is a taste thing. It's just not very specific. But also when I design like through taste, literally. There is a quality when you make things which, rather than being machine made, when they have imperfect qualities of something that is handmade and therefore does have inconsistencies, there is a tactile quality that does make it feel very human, I think. So even if it's a very monumental sort of space like that, the closer you get to it, it does start to have a very, very human scale quality to it that draws you in right up until you notice the kind of little cracks in it. So that's Croydon Colonnade, which is just near East Croydon Station in South London. I really am very passionate about the fact that cities can be, and I believe they should be, kind of symbolic embodiments of the incredible kind of liberal democracies and broad societies that we live in. That there's so much diversity of thought, interesting range of cultures, different perspectives, different traditions, and that the physical fabric can embody that in a way that is more kind of tangible. And for me, like, the use of color in different ways is just an immediately accessible and easy way to do that. And so, I guess I imagine this, the city, rather than them being kind of endless reproductions of themselves where buildings just come in and they look like buildings that are next to them or already exist, or they look like every other building in the world. So either Canary Wharf, where it looks like it could be in Toronto, it looks like it could be in Hong Kong. If they could somehow become like symbolic parliaments, that in parliament we have people who represent people from all over the country, all their constituencies, and they talk about ideas that come from all over the country, that our cities could become kind of really rich, beautifully variegated, symbolic parliaments full of aesthetic difference to a degree, right? I'm not going super extreme, but that embodies that richness in a visual way. So on a kind of theoretical level, that's something that really, really excites me. And then that filters down also to aesthetics and the fact that that could be embodied in ways that is just so rich. And I also think that it would mean that people would connect with cities again in a way that was more visceral, because people relate to things that have character. You develop almost kind of anthropomorphic relationships with things that have a lot of character, that have difference to them. And like, for instance, if you go to areas of the city that were built in Victorian times, buildings have so much more character and people relate to them really strongly. And again, there's a lot of great architecture now. This is, I guess, just something that I would love more of. The idea of streets that you walk down that are as full of personality and character as if you had met a bunch of different amazing and interesting people. That really, really excites me. And color and materiality that I talked about, before, is very much kind of folded into that dream. And that's the kind of thing that I like to go to bed dreaming about.